Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm going to be talking about the upcoming Babaji birthday celebration at the end of April. But I wanted to put this video out first. Very important aspect of the Sajmarg system, the Gratefulness meditation that we're doing, which is just, the Sajmarg meditation. And that is, it is a practice. What you do in the meditation, whether it be the group meditation that we do or the individual meditation on Friday night, or your own personal cleaning and meditation that you would do, 9 o'clock prayer, universal prayer. The more you do it, the more you benefit and the better you get at it, just like anything else. It's a practice. You're practicing something internally, just like someone would practice an instrument or sports or the work that you do. I mean, when you just do things over and over again, whether it be a job or cook food or you live your life and you do repetitive things, you're practicing to do them. And the more you do them, the better you get at it. The more you experience it, the more you learn about it, the more you know about it, the more you figure out about it. And just like any kind of practice, you got to log the hours. You just got to do it, and you got to, commit to it. And the more that you do it, the more that you're going to eventually benefit from it. And there are people who didn't feel the transmission right away or didn't see the benefit right away, but they stuck with it. My brother being one of them. He was someone that was described as having dogged effort, right? Somebody who was good at grinding things out, even though, he didn't have the initial reason for doing the Sajmark system of the feelings that you get from the meditation. And he stuck with it, right? And so, people like that who are, good at practicing things, are good at pushing through the difficulties and the monotony or the boredom of practice, any kind of practice. You have this when I played basketball. Sometimes you got to grind out a win. Some days the shots aren't falling. You're not in the flow. It's not fun. It's a sloppy game. You're having trouble dribbling. You're having trouble making shots and a lot of turnovers and a lot of, whatever it is. And you can still play defense. You can still hustle and you can still stick with the game even though you're not doing a good job. You're not having that much fun. It's not pleasurable. It's not easy. And you can grind out a win, right? You can grind out a win that you can snatch victory from defeat. And it's the same thing with the practice here. I've had a number of meditations where, I used to meditate an hour. Like that's how much you're supposed to do. Not more than an hour, but, up to an hour in the morning. And there were times where I had very restless meditation. The time just dragged. I mean, you're going to have meditations like this. And, I would get to the very end, and then the last minute, I would experience transmission, like minute 59. Like it's happened numerous times that I wouldn't feel any sort of positive feeling, until the end. Or even, if I didn't feel any positive feeling, I felt good aside from that, right? And, Master Charji said that some of the, his best meditations, his best experiences, the ones that he benefited the most from, were very difficult. They were a struggle to get through. Just like with anything else, there's no pain, no gain. It's like that's what you have to do. You have to have resistance, right? When you're lifting weights, you have to have something that's resisting you. The weights are wanting to push down to the ground, and you're fighting against the density of the weights and gravity and all of these things. And in general, life is like that. There's things that are in your way, obstacles, and you have to overcome them, and you feel great. The bigger the obstacle, the better you feel. The more more satisfying it is, and the rest of it. And the meditation is no different. And so when you start doing the Sajmarg meditation, so there is a book called the commentary on the 10 maxims of Sajmarg, and here is the first maxim. And I'm going to give my explanation. You can read Babaji's explanation. The second link in the playlist here, there is a link to the websites where you can read the complete works of Ramchandra or this book individually. And so Babaji explains the 10 maxims of Sajmarg. Some of it's hard to understand because it's abstract and it talks about the spiritual world. But he says, rise before dawn, offer your prayer and puja, which is worship, at a fixed hour, preferably before sunrise, sitting in one of the same pose. Have a separate place and seat for worship. Purity of mind and body should be especially adhered to. And so that's the conditions for this practice. It's better to meditate before dawn. If you can't do it, you can't do it, right? But if you can get up at the same time every day and you have a separate place that just is for spirituality, right? These are what the ashram's for. This is why I talk about when Daji rolls out these corporate events in the meditation hall. You know, the meditation hall and all these ashrams was supposed to be kept sacred and just for meditation. And so the reason is you're building a field. Like you're making an appointment with God every day to wake up at whatever time and sit there and meditate in the same spot. And when you do that and you have again, purity of mind and body where you're having you're focusing on God and you're in your better sort of self. You're not thinking of the mundane things and, whatever it might be. But you're going there to meet God and meditate and you build the field. And the energy's there. Like people feel the energy if they sat in that seat, which you don't really want people to in a sense because it's this private little place that you have. You're creating like a small little ashram in your house, in your apartment. And, if you have a separate place or whatever, you can feel it. And even if you don't, if you meditate in the same spot, even if you do other things there, you start changing the condition of your house and your room and, you're building a field of energy and you're starting to get better and better at this and you're expanding and your capacity to absorb the transmission gets better and you become cleaner and cleaner, your condition gets better, your spiritual approach gets better, and it builds over time. You're creating this field of energy and you're connecting with the, this other plane of existence, this other, level of divinity, and it's just, there's a whole thing there, right? And so it starts with this maxim one of doing this meditation in the morning. The reason you meditate before dawn is that when it's dark and it's, and Babaji explains this, it's kind of hard to understand because of his, just the way he explains things. He has a specific way of writing and talking and things and thinking about things. But when you're in the night, you're closer to death and it's easier for you to connect to God. During the day when the sun's up, one of the best times to meditate is at like 12 noon or when the sun's at its peak or whatever it is, for whatever reason. That's also a good time. But when you're awake and you're in the daylight hours, you're more alive. You're more body conscious. When you're sleeping, you're more soul conscious in the nighttime hours. And when the sun withdraws its heat, it creates a calmness in your physical body and your spiritual body. So it's better to meditate before dawn. And there's also a balance in the universe between light and darkness at dawn and dusk. And so that's why you feel like it's a spiritual time. When I first told my brother about the Sajmarg meditation, we were fishing on a lake. I drove to his house with my nephew, who's got a very, spiritual sort of, my brother's youngest son, who has a, very spiritual presence. I'm his godfather, right? So, he was, his two other sons were more like my brothers, but he was like my nephew, and he was probably about 8 or 9, 10 years old. And we were fishing, Peter and Paul on this lake in Great Barrington, Massachusetts or New York or wherever it is. It's, it's country, there's these great lakes there, these big lakes there. And it was sunset. I told him about Sajmarg, and he said, I'll start. And I could feel the energy. And just there's an energy at sunset and sunrise. There's a calmness, a balance in the universe, right? That's why people enjoy being outside and seeing the sunset and the sunrise. It's a time for spirituality. And so if you meditate right before dawn, right before the light comes up, your body has withdrawn all of that heat from the previous day, especially in India where it's so hot and the sun, these things. And you can find, some of those places it's very hard to find coolness, some, break from the heat. And the heat is something that, you want your body to be, whatever it is. Like it's not all that much to do with the physical thing, but the heat was withdrawn from your system. It's easier to meditate. Again, if you can meditate at the same time every day, might not be the exact same time because of the changing, how daylight changes and sunrise is at a different time every day. Of course, there's daylight savings time. But in terms of time related to sunrise or whatever it is, And, at least in the morning, it's just better to do it fresh in the morning. And you meditate and connect to God, and you feel that energy, and you continue throughout the day, and then you come home at night, you do the cleaning, you're done with your work, whatever, do your cleaning before going to bed, and then you pray and you connect to God while you're sleeping, and you wake up and start the whole thing over again. And you're beginning to formulate this connection with God. And it's minimal effort in the beginning. You're just testing it out and trying it and all these things. But as you do it more and more, you push through it. It becomes a habit. It becomes something you feel. And before you know it, your mind just starts drifting into a state of meditation where you're thinking about God. You're feeling God's love. Transmission starts falling on you like divine grace and things. And this is how the practice works. And it just becomes more and more, just habitual. Just like everything else, you have your habits of, taking a shower, brushing your teeth, and, eating, or whatever it is, right? You have your rituals and your things that you do. And then, it becomes one of those things. So it might not start off with some, big event or whatever. Some people it's different than others. I had these big experiences that were convincing, but, there was the practice that I've done over the years that's benefited me and, helped me to just, become a better person and more connected to God and all these things compared to what I used to be. And that's the most important thing, right? It's that it's relative to who you are, and you become a better person in some way, in the right way, in terms of your divinity, in terms of your connection to God. And then, as you progress with that, it becomes more and more of that, right? It builds, and it's just like, it's not like it has to be overwhelming. You just start, doing adding these things to your daily routine, whatever time you have for it. And then you just increase the time, and you start to do it. You start to need to do it, just like breathing or eating or drinking water or whatever, sleeping. Becomes something that you to sustain your life. You feel like you need to meditate and connect with God, and then it becomes a whole different level of commitment because of just you see the benefits of it. And so, I think this is a really important aspect of it. I'm going to add it to the playlist somewhere around, after the initial videos that explain everything. But this is really important for people to understand, right? Like, you're not going to be good at it right away. You can, whatever you start off as, that's probably the worst you're going to be at it. And then as you practice more and more, you become better. And just, in a short period of time, and you're learning to hone those skills, develop your heart as an instrument to connect to God. You're creating the atmosphere and the spiritual condition in your house and your environment, and you're, doing all these things. And it's just you're not thinking about them as much, and then you're gaining this relationship and connection, and it just carries over. Whatever you do, whatever you accomplish in this life, you'll carry over to your next existence, and you'll start over from there, right? It'll, you'll find your way back to this thing, and you'll pick up where you left off. I mean, that's the practice and the experience of this system. That's what's supposed to happen. But anyways, I think these are important things to think about, and it's a practice. Which remember, it's called a practice. This is my practice. This is how's the practice going for you? Did you do your practice? These things. This is how people used to talk in the Sage Mark system. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.